Okay, let's try this whole multiplayer shtick again. We don't have anything to do in the early game there. Yeah, I think we'll mulligan that. Okay, that's even worse. Luckily we get a free mulligan in multiplayer. Yeah, and we can put a land on the bottom of our library, because we have plenty of lands in hand there. So let's just go for... we'll go for the mana confluence on the bottom actually. We are playing Edgar Markov. I used to play this in 1 vs 1 before the channel came into existence, but it has since been banned in 1 vs 1, and for good reason. So we won't be playing that on the 1 vs 1 side of the channel. I haven't had much time to create multiplayer decks, so I've really just quickly edited this one. I don't know if it's going to be all that great for multiplayer, but there's only one way to find out, and that is by playing it. Edgar Markov is a 6-mana Mardu commander, a 4/4 with Eminence. Whenever we cast another vampire spell, if it's in the command zone or on the battlefield, we get a 1/1 black vampire token. He has first strike and haste, and whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each vampire you control. He does include himself in that. And Nekusar going for early game card draw. Nekusar the Mindrazer is a 5-mana Grixis commander, a 2/4. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card, and whenever an opponent draws a card, Nekusar pings that player. And a turn 1 tutor in Imperial Seal for Purraj of Urborg. That is a cat, we'll go with Purraj. That's 5 mana for a 2/3. It has first strike as long as it's attacking, and whenever a player casts a black spell, you can pay black, and if you do, you put a plus counter on this creature. I want to Sensei's Top for Naban, Dean of Iteration, 2 mana for a 2/1. If a wizard entering the battlefield under your control causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, then it triggers an additional time. Kind of like Teysa Karlov, but for wizards. Okay, we've seen a Sensei's Top and a tutor already, so I don't think we're going to look like too much of a threat if we get down Dark Confident. So we'll go for that, and I'm just assuming that we're going to see a board wipe at some point in the early game, so I won't mind seeing the back of Dark Confident. This is a really low mana curve in this deck, so we'd be pretty unlucky if we were to get too much damage dealt to us by Dark Confident. Kedirect is not going to do any draw pain shenanigans until our opponent gets a red permanent into play. And a Sol Ring might have been what our opponent tutored for with the Imperial Seal. And a Dark Steel Plate, so this may well be some kind of Voltron build. And Naban, Dean of Irritation coming down. So we may be seeing wizard interactions sooner than we thought we were going to. Falconwrath Aristocrat is pretty good. I think I don't want to vomit my hand onto the board. Like I say, this isn't exactly built to be a multiplayer deck. I'm just curious to see how it's going to pan out. Get down Shared Animosity. We'll try and set up a little bit. And I am going to hold back because I don't want to make any enemies too early on. But as soon as we get a vampire army of some kind out, I will definitely be turning everything sideways. Erebos, God of the Dead, is actually relevant to us because we do have some life gain in the deck, with it being vampires. This thing stops us gaining life, and it's 2 mana, pay 2 life to draw a card as well. Vesuva comes down as just a basic swamp for our opponent. A Trinket Mage, so we'll see if this is a Sol Ring or not. And it does trigger twice, thanks to it being a wizard. A Seat of the Synod, a land drop for next turn, I think. And then an Expedition map, so no Sol Ring, surprisingly. And then swinging in at the Purraj opponent, which, yeah, makes perfect sense. Noteworthy that Nekusar has missed a land drop, by the way. I didn't realise that. They got down a Ponder in the early game, didn't they? Yeah, they got down a Ponder on turn 1, so that's pretty unlucky that they haven't gotten into a land yet. Alright, do we want to just vomit our hand onto the board here? We can go Dark Ritual Unclaimed territory goes into that. Yeah, let's just see how far along we get with this. Metallic Mimic is obviously going to name Vampire. And then Dark Ritual, just showing that this is a 1 versus 1 deck that I haven't put too much time into editing. And we get a 1/1 Vampire because we have cast Falconwrath Aristocrat. And our vampires come in with plus counters because of the Metallic Mimic. And Falconwrath Aristocrat is a 5/2 flying with haste, a really good creature in this deck. And it's +1 per other creature that is swinging in with her. Thankfully for our opponent, there is nothing else swinging in with Falconwrath Aristocrat. But if we can get a vampire token army going, then Shared Animosity is really good. And is Nekusar still missing land drops? Yes, he certainly is. That is... well, it's actually quite ironic considering all the card draw that's in Nekusar. Tormod's Crypt comes down. We don't really care too much about the graveyard. Be intrigued to see who our opponent targets with that. And yeah, they're definitely setting up to get their commander down. So we'll have to remember to leave up blockers for that thing. Underworld Dreams is a card you would expect Nekusar to play. Now, I don't like the idea of Naban just passing with 4 mana held open. That might be a Venser. I'm pretty sure Venser is a wizard. And it could just be straight up counter magic, because our opponent's obviously in blue. Just ripping into lands, unfortunately. We'll just see about getting down a tap land with the Marsh Flats. Probably a Boros land with that. We'll hold back the Dark Confidant as a blocker. And we're going to go after the mono black player because we want rid of this Erebos just in case we want to get some life gain going. Shared Animosity will trigger 3 times and put big buffs on our creatures. We're holding up Dismember as well so that we can get rid of their Purraj. I imagine that they're going to go for their commander next turn, but I assume that they want to put mana into equipping the Swiftfoot boots if they can. Now, does the bad luck with Nekusar continue? Yeah, they've finally gotten into another land, but do they have a 2 mana spell? Kami of the Crescent Moon is exactly that. And there's only 1 pain effect on the board, and it doesn't even belong to Nekusar. Kami of the Crescent Moon is at the beginning of each player's draw step. That player draws an additional card. That is what Nekusar typically has their opponents do, is has everyone draw lots of cards. You benefit from them as the Nekusar player, and your opponents all get dealt a lot of damage as punishment for drawing so many cards. Only a matter of time before we see a wheel effect from Nekusar, if they stick around that long. Now let's see if we get a board wipe here. Exsanguinate, each opponent loses 3 life. Well, if we're going to see Exsanguinate, then I'd rather see an Exsanguinate only for 3. So our opponent jumps up by 9 life there. And Naban is going to spin the top. They obviously didn't hate the look of anything that was cast last turn. Assuming that they had any counter magic, that is. And a Mystical Tutor. Let's see what they go for here. We know of 2 of the cards in hand, the Expedition Map and Seat of the Synod. And they've gone for Devastation Tide. That is pretty bad for us, actually. It's not the worst. We can still cast these things, but it just slows things down a little bit too much for my liking. Now, Devastation Tide is 2 mana, I think. Yeah, now the question is, do we go for Dismember onto Naban to make that cost 4 mana? Because they could Devastation Tide and then recast Naban this turn if they wanted to. Let's see if they go for it. I don't see why they'd put it on the top and then not cast it. Yep, they're going for it. So let's go for this Dismember. I just want to try and punish our opponent for doing that. Okay, they're drawing a card, so they might have a cheap counterspell on top that they were eager to get. Nope, they were just drawing into a card and probably just keeping the the Sensei's top safe on top of their library. Expedition map for Naban, and are they going to crack it? Yep, they're going to crack it straight away. I think they're shuffling away their Sensei's top there, aren't they? They have gone for Reliquary Tower, an unlimited hand size. Now we're only going to draw one card, but Haunt of High Tower is good. Now we don't have any means of gaining life apart from the Haunt of High Tower, do we? I'm actually tempted to get that down. No, but I think I want to leave that as a surprise for our opponent, so let's just set up for a little bit here. We'll replay the Metallic Mimic, and we'll go for the Falconwrath Aristocrat, and then let's go in at the blue player. I don't want to make too much of it. I thought I'd be able to take out Purraj, but Naban clearly has other ideas about that. So I'm going to just concentrate on the blue player so that I don't make too much of an enemy of this commander. And just getting down Kami again, I imagine we're just going to see a lot of cards replayed this turn. And I'm hoping we don't see Erebos for a couple of turns, because I think this is a Voltron commander, which means they'll want to get out their Darksteel plate and Swiftfoot boots, all the rest of it. I'd really like to regain some life with Haunt of High Tower, but our opponent might react to Haunt of High Tower with an Erebos. Oh, and there we are. There's a Sword of Feast and Famine. That's not good for us. That will give protection from most of our deck. And I'm hoping that they're not too bitter about us swinging in against them a couple of times. Oh, Future Sight is not good. Luckily, our opponent got rid of the Sensei's top. I'm pretty sure that they put that on top and shuffled it away. But that, along with, what's the Vidalcan card? I can't remember, but there's an infinite combo, or maybe a couple of infinite combos with Future Sight anyway. At least we can see what's coming. Vidalcan Shackles is really bad as well. Okay, how about Shared Animosity? We'll go for a Duskborn Sky March, just to get a token in play, and we'll get down this Dark Confident as well, and then we'll swing in at this blue player again. And this time the Shared Animosity will trigger, and that's taking their life total halfway down. That's 15 damage to them. They go from 28 down to 13. Alright, a Magus of the Wheel does encourage me to get down the Haunt of High Tower pretty soon. But I do think our opponent's going to get down that Erebos, so we're not going to make as much use out of the lifelink. It will still become a huge creature though. This thing says whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a plus counter on it. That does extremely well with wheel effects. A Jet Medallion for Purraj. And finally down comes our opponent's commander. We don't have the Dismember anymore, of course, so they are going to get that Swiftfoot boots on there. And the thing I'm concerned about is the Vidalcan Shackles over on Naban's library there. If they get another island into play, which I imagine they will, then they're going to be able to steal our Falconwrath Aristocrat away from us. We can sacrifice the Falconwrath Aristocrat to itself. So we might still be able to get through for lethal on our opponent. And that's funny, they've got another Future Sight on top. Yep, they get their 5th island, but they'll have to put 5 mana into Vidalcan Shackles if that's what they want to do, and I think we can still go wide on them anyway. I will absolutely concentrate on getting this blue player out of the game. Now, the question is, does the blue player have Cyclonic Rift? Nope, they've just scooped, so we don't even have to turn things sideways. They shouldn't have scooped there because they didn't know which way we were going to swing, but just so happens that we were absolutely going to take them out of the game. Now, I would love some kind of haste enabler for this Haunt of High Tower. Alright, Temple of the False God is good. 6, 7, 8, 9 mana we need to get all this out. And we can. I don't think I need to hold up mana for this thing. So let's just go with Tithe Drinker. And our opponent doesn't have any black mana held up to put a plus counter on Purraj. I feel like we can really overextend here because Nekusar has a wheel held up. And they almost need to wheel to ensure their land drops. And we're not going to pay for the extort on Tithe Drinker. Down comes Haunt of Hightower. That might dissuade our opponent from using a wheel. We're just getting down a whole token army here. Really overextending, but I want to try and end the game as quickly as possible. Like I said at the beginning of the game, this is a 1 versus 1 deck, really. So it is catered towards getting games over with sooner rather than later. Not necessarily an intelligent strategy in multiplayer, but it might just work out for us. Now then, that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 triggers from the shared animosity. I'm just debating whether or not to swing in with Metallic Mimic. I think we can. Yeah, I think we'll go for that. And no matter what they block here... Oh, they could block the Dark Confident. Well, I'm not really worried about them doing that. Yep, they go for blocking Metallic Mimic. And I haven't done the maths here, so I don't know if they are... Yep, they go down to -4, so this is working out a lot better than I thought it would. Now our opponent has a big decision to make. I doubt they can do a whole lot to us with... Well, they've got 4 mana now, so they could wipe the board. A Damnation would do it. Oh, Crawl Space does it as well. No more than 2 creatures can attack you each combat. That is a really good... Yeah, that's a really good spell our opponent just cast there. And then there's the Kedarect Parasite. Now, because this deck is catered towards getting out lots of vampire tokens, it's very creature heavy and quite removal light. I don't tend to build removal light decks, but in this case, in order to make it a really good deck for 1 versus 1, I decided to forego the removal. I think we might get down our commander this turn, actually. Let's go in with... We'll get this Shizo Death Storehouse in. Then we can potentially make our commander unblockable. Yeah, we'll swing in with the Haunt of Hightower and Falconwrath Aristocrat. And then when the Haunt of Hightower swings in, our opponent has to discard a card, which will buff the Haunt of Hightower. They have 6 cards in hand, soon to be only 5. They discarded a Sunken Hollow, so they must have started getting into their lands finally. And we just tap this down to make the Haunt of Hightower a little bit bigger. And I'm going to keep the Carrier Thrall in hand. Let's get out our commander here. And we might as well extort our opponent. We'll do it with that land. And we're back up to a pretty decent 35. I'm a little bit more comfortable there because I have a feeling that Nekusar is going to start piling damage onto us. The Kedarect is online thanks to Magus of the Wheel. Yet another thing that might dissuade them from cracking this is the fact that Kedarect won't work without a red permanent in play. Although they can afford Nekusar. So they might go Nekusar for another red permanent and another pinger. And then we'll be dealt 2 damage per card drawn. If the turn after they go for Magus of the Wheel. Yep, looks like that's what the plan is. Now we get to draw some cards here, but we're going to pay the price for it from Nekusar. And we're getting into a heap of lands here. Hopefully we get something else that can help us out of this tricky situation. Yeah, giving our commander fear isn't really going to help us here. So I think we just need to stick with the evasive plan. We do have a sort of lord here though. We can discard a card to give our vampires +1/+1. So I think we'll go for that. And we can get some extort triggers on the go as well. And then we'll activate this. We'll discard the Bloodstained Mire. And then we want to hold up a mana for the Duskborn Sky Marcher. Then 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we might be able to... We're struggling on white mana there, aren't we? Let's get down Command Tower. I'm just trying to get a lot of extort damage onto our opponent. We have to swing in first in order to be able to target with the Duskborn Sky Marcher. The Haunt of Hightower is what we want. Luckily, we have some evasive creatures for our opponent to struggle through. And then we give the Haunt of Hightower +1/+1. That's 9. That's 16 damage. And then 17, 18. Yeah, we're just one shy. If we can keep the Extort around, then we might be able to pull this off. Carrier Thrall into the Extort. We can go white into that. And then black and red, and then white again, yes, so we can afford it. Cutting it really fine. And there we go. Let's see if our opponent can do anything to us this turn. Noteworthy that we can make the Falconwrath Aristocrat indestructible to a board wipe, because we have a human in play, in Dark Confident. But I'm more concerned with our opponent using a couple of wheels on us. Nope, they don't have anything, so it's good game to our opponent. And yeah, pretty surprised at that actually. We won out with Edgar Markov. I know that the Nekusar player was struggling for a few turns there, but no one touched them. So they had a little bit of a chance to come back, and that crawl space really hurt us there. But luckily we got into some life gain, a lot of life gain actually, in Haunt of Hightower. And then the Extort really helped us towards the end there. Had we not have gained the life from the Haunt of Hightower, I think that game might have gone differently. I didn't keep track of how much life we were gaining, but I think we got down into the 20s at one point. And a wheel with both of these in play would have dealt 14 damage to us. And then another wheel would have been another 14. That's 28 damage, and like I say, without the lifelink, that would have put us in range of a loss to Nekusar, but we managed to pull it off. Edgar Markov, haven't played this in a while, and I have very much missed playing it in 1 versus 1, but apparently we can give it a good run in multiplayer, so hope you all enjoyed that. A successful return to multiplayer, I think. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.